ready to talk some fantasy with my friend Charles.
I'm ready to talk some fantasy with my friend as well, Dylan, but not just any fantasy today, because today
Ooh.
we are back with episode 2 of our return from our short little hiatus. And, in that time, there was a lot of reading that took place, at least on my side, and we just finished Friends Pitching
Ouch.
Fantasy on the last episode, and so we're reading those books. We're reading The Daughter's War by Christopher Buehlman right now, which I'm a couple chapters in. I'm enjoying it. I mean, that guy can. While we're
Mm.
working on those, we still have a lot to talk about. We have to catch up on all the reading we've done.
Yeah, and I appreciate you starting the episode on a passive aggressive tone with
It's
a
all
lot
Pete.
of reading in the passive tense, literally, and you're like a lot of reading occurred. Most of it on my end, but and by my we mean you, Charles. But it's fair. It's fair. We did mention that in the previous episode, and we might as well put all that reading that you did to work. And how are we going to go about doing that, Charles?
Great question. Well, over the break I haven't officially counted, but it looks around 20 to 25-ish books. And so some of them I'm sure we'll dive
Which
in.
is wild because it was 4 months, which means you were on pace for like close to or right around 100 books read if it were a year, or no, my math is off. You would be at
Uh
75-ish,
yeah,
75-ish
yeah, yeah.
if you did 25. Right? Wait, no.
No,
Yeah,
cuz I
yeah, yeah,
did
yeah.
in 4 months I did
75,
20-ish
4 months,
books.
20, 25 I was doing, which would be
Yeah. Yeah.
75, and it's
Well,
times
let's see.
three.
2
It
4
is
6.
really early for me. It is 7 in the morning over
And
in
actually there's
mountain
26
time.
books on this
This is
list.
brutal.
26 books, but
Okay,
some
so
are
you would
short
be at
stories,
78.
some are like very very short and some are much longer. And so it kind of balances out, I think. So let's get right into it. I figured the best way to go through this is I created a tier list, and I'm gonna go ahead and put all of the books out on a tier list. And actually, I just realized I'm gonna grab the books off the shelf, and I didn't. So I may be running back and forth to grab books off the shelf if I wanted to show you
Ooh,
guys.
well, Charles, I hope you didn't pull the like uh what would it be like business on the top, party on the bottom, a sort of Zoom
Yeah,
move,
you'll.
which is exactly what I'm doing to let folks behind the scenes. So I'm like, I don't really want to stand up because I'm doing the polo on top, sweatpants on the bottom
Oh,
move.
okay. I
So
was thinking like you're in
Charles,
your
if
underwear or
you're gonna get
something.
up, no, no, not that. I'm not ready to party at that level, but
You gotta
more just the
keep the fans
sweatpants. Yeah.
guessing, I guess. No, I'm wearing basketball shorts. It's fine. It's all good.
Oh, so you are doing the.
I mean,
I
this is
mean,
a just a
you are doing
t-shirt,
it.
so it's nothing fancy. This is my just rolled out of
You look
bed
great. You look
look.
great.
That
Head
is
to
one of the
YouTube.
benefits of being
Head
on
to
YouTube.
YouTube. Yes, head to YouTube if you want to see Charles get up in his really nice setup up top with basketball shorts on the bottom. We know you've all been dreaming of that moment. So
Will we
come to
see the
Fred's Talking
basketball
Fantasies
shorts? Are
YouTube
they going
page.
to appear? I don't know. You'll have to tune in and find out. And don't forget to
Mm.
like and subscribe, right?
Oh yes. Ring that bell. Is
Let
it's a bell, right?
yeah, yeah. Let's get right into this. So let's see if I set this up correctly, and let's go to the tier list. There we go. I'm gonna reposition myself a little bit. Forehead's in the shot. Okay, so here we are. Um, we've got a bunch of books here. So you'll see that we've split this into 5 tiers. I did this kind of for fun for myself. I have like a notes in my phone, in my notes app, and I was just kind of writing the titles down and moving them around as a fun thing to do while I was doing all of this reading. And so you'll have S tier, which is like the best of the best, all the way down to DNF, which were books I did. And so that's the tier list, and let's jump right into it. Are you ready, Dylan?
I just want to comment on the same thing I always comment with tier lists, which is why do we have an S tier? Like, why not start at A? It's not like you were going to run out of the typical grading system letters, but whatever, such
Well, I
is
take S tier
tradition.
very
When it,
seriously. There's
I
of the
know. Okay.
26, there's only two, and
Okay.
in the
But you could have taken A tier very seriously and had A at the top, but
yeah, but there's B's and
whatever.
C's.
I
You'll see. You'll
Yeah, but
see.
there could be A, so you could have A, B, C, D, F, like, or you don't even have a D because you thought you were super clever to make it a D and
Oh,
F,
that's
like
not
A, B,
even
C,
passive
D,
aggressive. That's
and
just
F.
like full on
Dude,
hostility.
it is so early. My level of caffeine is just
You gotta have your
egregiously
coffee with
low.
you.
I have a
I
tea.
thought I was clever. How
So
about we
you're
just talk
getting
some books?
a
How about that?
thorny, yeah, a thorny Dylan today.
Guys, we just came back from hiatus. We have to get used to creating content again, and we have to be camera ready. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
But these are good books, and Dylan, you've read a handful of them because over the break I made an effort to catch up on some reading that you had done, that I knew you had read and liked, that I wanted to catch up and read. So you'll be
Yep.
able to participate in some of these. But let's just jump into the DNF. I only have one book in this tier, thankfully, and it is. And I'm just seeing here it is. It is The Witch King by Martha Wells, and
Whoa, a Martha Wells
I
book is,
I
and I
know.
have not read that one. This is
No,
shocking. You're starting
I
off with a
was
bang here, Charles.
imagine how shocked I was because we had read and adored the Murderbot, All Systems Red, right? Which
Yeah,
is
the
part of the
first of the
Murderbot
Murderbot Diaries.
Diaries. And right out of the gate, that book was overflowing with charm and spy and intrigue. And so imagine my
Humor.
interest when Martha Wells writes like a epic fantasy story with kind of
Hmm.
this necromancer magic system. And I was like, this is gonna be great. And you start reading it,
Right.
and it's has no charm, it has no wit, it's a non-linear story. The necromancy is like he's got his necromancy power body in the center of the earth, and then on the surface he has another body. So the narrative is always being like his top body was doing this, and his like magic body was doing that, and you're like, what is
It's like
going?
Severance. You got an
Kind of,
innie, you got an outie.
kind of. And so it just had, it was like this really detached narrative that like was like really hard to focus, and it had none of the charm I was expecting from Murderbot, where it's like the first chapter, this robot designed to kill things at an epic level is isolating itself and watching cat videos on the internet. So I'm like, okay, where's the that trade book Martha Wells charm? It just wasn't there, and so I went about 25% of the way in, and I was just like, I don't I'm not following this, like the characters or whatever, so I'm just gonna move on. And so that was The Witch King. And then I looked it up on Goodreads. I'm like, am I the only one? And it has under a 4 on Goodreads. Got like a 3.8, 3.9, maybe even
Hmm.
lower. And that's kind of telling for someone who's like Martha Wells, who's coming off of like Hugo nomination, right? Like
Yeah.
really,
She
really,
might have won
she
it
might have even
for
won
like best novella.
to come right off
Don't
of that.
quote
And
me
even
on that,
Goodreads was
but
like, oh, it's a Goodreads Book of the Year nominee. So they were giving it everything they could, and it just didn't crack a 4. And so, and a lot of the criticism I read on those, I shared. It's mostly just like how detached and not charismatic it is compared to everything. So it's probably just a mismatch of expectations more than anything. But if you like necromancy, then maybe there's something there for you. So
yeah, that go ahead,
you
Charles.
can
Keep
reply
him.
because I'm ready to move on.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's just we talked last time a little bit about the how it can be weird when you come to know an author for a certain kind of charm. Like
Mm.
my reservations is even strong about uh, like going going from Black Tongue Thief to Daughter's War because I'm super
Yeah,
pumped about Daughter's War, but
yeah.
maybe the right word would be like curiosities of how it'll be different because the tone is so different. We did get some responses on the comments to the last video we did that said like, "Yep, not really funny, but still obviously good." But
Mhm.
sounds like that wasn't your experience of the Witch King, or just is it just Witch King, Charles?
It's just, I think it's
Then
just Witch King. Um,
like much like Counting Crows is just Counting Crows,
hmm.
but it would be easy to think they were the
Let's go to
Counting
the next
Crows.
book. This book,
C for Counting Crows.
yeah, C for Counting Crows. Um,
Yeah.
this book would have been on the DNF list if it wasn't
Mm.
one, short, and two, one that you read and highly recommended, and one that people like all over the world love, highly recommended. And that is This Is How You Lose the Time War.
Mm.
And gods, I did not understand. I didn't get it. I'm reading this and I'm like, what do people like about this? It was over the top, flowery language. It was like a complicated sci-fi time travel-y thing and a romance with two characters that to me didn't resonate at all. And so I'm reading this and I'm just like, I'm not feeling the romance, I'm not feeling the sci-fi, not feeling the prose. I would have bailed, but you had recommended it, and then it's like nominated. Did it win? It won some kind of prestigious award, right? Nominated for some. So I'm like,
Yeah, I
what did
think
these
so.
people know that I don't know? It made me feel like I was missing something, and it's short, so I finished it, and I was like, no, I didn't feel like I didn't miss anything. I just didn't get it, and so I kind of wanted to hear from you, where now that I've read it, to hear your recommendation again so I can try to understand what the heck was going on with this book because I did not like it.
Hmm. And this is the book then that before we started recording, you accused me of gaslighting you about,
Well,
which
I
you
gaslit
gaslighting in
myself
this
because
case
of
is just
your recommendation, so it is your fault. But you didn't actually
I'll
do
take the
gaslighting.
blame, but
Because you
yeah,
were like, "Oh, this book was so
gaslighting.
good," like, because you sold me on the premise, which I really like. It's a romance story, and it's told through letters being sent back and forth through time, and they're trying to like one up each other. I love the way, like, the inspiration, the way it was written, where it's actually two authors like typing letters to each other back and forth and responding to
Hmm.
those, and it's kind of improvised a little bit. Like I loved all of that going into it, so I was hyped to the gills going
Mm.
into this. And I waited literally on my audiobook, my library app. I waited something like 20 weeks for this. I was on hold waiting for this because it was just such a long wait list. And I was like, God, everyone is killing themselves to get to this book. And then it finally arrives. And I was like, this is it? Like, this is all I get? This talk about I'm blue, yabu dee yabu die, and like all this other weird crap. I don't know. I didn't enjoy it. But
Mm.
But I mean, what do people
To
like about it? Dylan? As
clarify,
someone who liked the book, can you
yes,
voice
yeah.
the alternate opinion so that people know?
Hmm. To clarify, in this case, gaslighting is me enjoying the book and then you not enjoying the book. Um,
But me
then
continuing to read it because like I'm
I
assuming
enjoyed the
I'm
book.
going to enjoy it because you enjoy. I'm like, well, Dylan liked it. The
Yeah,
world
okay.
likes it. I waited
Yeah.
20 freaking weeks for this book to be available. I'm gonna read this thing. It's
Sounds
good.
like
It's
you
good. I
gaslighted
swear. Oh, this
yourself,
prose is
Charles.
brilliant. I
I'll
swear.
Okay. Yeah, well the pros that is for me. I think there's a lot of innuendo in the
Mm-hmm.
prose and whether grasped what was being done and just didn't like it, or mayhaps glanced over one or two, and who knows. But I'll say that this book, it's more of a vibe than it is anything else, and I just thought it was fun, it was charming.
Mm.
The prose is, in my opinion, clever, and the premise also interested me. The idea of two authors going back and forth on letters. So I think the background of that
Yeah.
also intrigued me,
Me too.
And because I think they started at writing retreat where they were literally
You had
just like
mentioned that,
sitting
yeah.
across from each other.
Yeah.
And uh, yeah, so I think a lot of those kind of things appealed to me, and it is short, which is
Hmm.
also fun. And there's a lot of cool underlying themes of it's like nature versus
Yeah.
technology. And I mean, at the end of the day, Charles, sometimes you just don't like a book, and
Yeah.
sometimes your lifelong friend, we have pretty similar tastes, which
Yeah.
is probably why you kept going, because this is a pretty rare occurrence that like we're just distinctly I liked a book and you did not like a book, which
Yeah.
is interesting.
It
But
is
we
interesting.
should
Hence
probably
the
keep rolling
hence the
this.
gaslighting that was all your fault. So thank you for that. But it is what it is. And let's jump to the next. So I think the good news is like everything after this book I actually liked to a degree, and so this would have been in the DNF column. I feel bad putting it in C, but it's the
I don't think you're supposed to, with a tier list, like go in order in this kind
you
of
can.
way. You're just,
I'm
you
going in
could,
order,
okay.
so the ones closest to the letter are
But
better.
there's supposed to be like an enjoyable, like, oh, where is he gonna put this one? Isn't that part of the
Yeah,
tier
yeah,
listing
but it's the
process?
degrees to which I liked it. Like I'm not gonna just
But then if you're just gonna go like B, 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 and then I'm getting to the A's, is that the nature of your
what?
tier listing?
No, I've got a lot more C's to go. Like most of the books are C's, but
But
I
is it gonna be C, 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 then B, 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 B? Like,
look. There's
do you
10
understand
C's, there's like
my
10
question?
B's, 5 A's, and 2 S's. So it
But it will go in order of you
yes.
putting 10 straight books into C, and then whatever,
I mean,
five straight books into
I
B or
can
whatever.
move it around if you want, but this is yeah.
Let's randomize it. I want the fun. I want the fun of ooh, like you put the book sort of on the
Oh,
screen.
okay,
You know
okay,
what I'm saying? And people are
yeah,
looking at that book and they're like, where is he going to go with this?
okay,
And then you
okay,
start talking about it. And I mean, that's a tier listing I've seen, I think, is kind of like that.
okay, okay.
We're newbies to this form,
Well, you
but
can do it either way. You can do it either way. But let's do that. Let's do why not I'll just pick a random one here. How about some
yeah.
Brandon Sanderson? People like Brandon Sanderson, right?
Ooh, okay.
So
I've noticed that, yeah.
so yeah, it's something that has been a thing. I finished the remaining COVID books. So I read, and I'll put them just in beef. I'll just put them like here for now. I read Tress in the Emerald Sea. I read the Frugal Wizard's Handbook, and I read The Sunlit Man. So
Mm,
we together had read Numi and the Nightmare Painter, and so now
loved
I'm
it.
over here reading the other ones.
Mhm.
And they were an interesting collection. I don't when I look at them all, um, I will say my favorite one was probably the Sunlit Man. The Sunlit Man, out of all of them, was like an action book. It brought me back more to Mistborn, where there was like a mad. He's like this guy who is a character from Stormlight Archives, and they say that right at the beginning. And he's one of the Dawn Shard and all that. So he's world hopping, he's being chased around, and he winds up in this world where it's a really, really small planet, but there's the sun on the planet will just kill anything. And so the people on this planet live on cities that are on ships, and they kind of just chase this Goldilocks zone of the like horizon around this short planet constantly, and they're always fleeing from the sun. And what happens is if a person dies in the sun, their heart like their body burns away, but their heart becomes this like source of power that they can go back and mine later, like when the sun passes, so they'll like leave their dead behind
By they, you mean not the person who died, but other
for
people
other
can go
people.
back
So
and
this
yeah.
society will nominate people to, when they run out of power for their ships, like stay behind, and they'll come back and collect their parts and then continue to go around. And so here's a guy who's got you know all this technology and knowledge, but he knows nothing about this magic system. He's trying to figure it out, and it's a relatively short book, and it's you can imagine where they're like always moving. It creates this fun, exciting um, dynamic, which I was kind of hungry for. I feel like a lot of these standalone books were meant to be more fun explorations into different genres and writing styles, and he would be funny and cute and romantic and all those things, which I appreciate and like go for it, Brandon Sanderson. But it was nice to be like, okay, now this one is for the fans. Let's make it fun. Let's make it exciting. And then I'd say my next favorite after that, and this was the last book I read before we came back, was The Frugal Wizard's Handbook. I had no idea what to expect with this one. I thought it was like wizards fantasy. Like I had no clue. It's a weird title, but it's a guy with amnesia wakes up in like a medieval style world, and he's got this handbook, and the handbook's all about like, oh, welcome to your new like universe where you're like the you could like run this place because of all your knowledge about the future. We purposefully dropped you in this medieval era so you could have fun. And he's like he's meeting people, and drama unfolds from there. I would say of all of these books, this is going to sound mean, but this one was successful in being funny. This was the funny one. I feel like when I read Tress in the Emerald Sea, and even Numi and the Nightmare Painter, had this cutesy, funny dialogue, and sometimes there was some chuckles, but this one was genuinely funny because he's got this handbook which is so like corporatized, and you'll read like, oh, this is your universe, and it's like, am I committing a colonism or colonialism? And then there's all these disclaimers and footnotes and marketing speak, and like at the end of a commercial for like medicine, it'll be like, may cause tumors, may cause cancer, may cause all these horrible things. It's got all of that in it. It makes for a really funny like dynamic, where this idea that you could buy a frugal like universe, and you could pretend you're like a wizard in this universe with your technology, and you could do whatever you want in your medieval universe. So it was a cute little book. It's short, and it was a different approach. I don't know what to expect going in, but I ended up liking it quite a bit. And then Tress and the Emerald Sea was my third favorite. I think of all of these, uh, I don't know. I feel like this one I might put in C, and the other two are B's. Tress was the one he wrote for his wife. It was cute. It was romantic. The character was charming. It takes place on an island, and Tress like goes out to save her romantic interest, and ends up on all these fantasy adventures along the way. I think he compared it to like The Princess Bride was a source of inspiration, and they go on like pirate ships and all these other things, and it's got its whole universe of its own magic. The dialogue I couldn't get into. It's Brandon Sanderson like at his maximum trying to be cute, and I just never was on board with that. It kind of reminds me of when we read Stormlight Archive, and there's scenes where these two characters are like on this date, if you will, and they start talking about, how do you poop in your armor, and you're God, like, can we stop? All of these books mention poops and farts, but like that was another thing that I was like, what is up with this guy?
Every single one.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure at least two of them. I can't remember if Tress does. I'm pretty sure it does, but the other two for
So
sure.
you're saying your two favorites were the ones that were most focused on poops and farts.
I mean, you got to rank them somewhere, right? So, yeah. So overall, two B's and a C. Like, I would recommend it to any fan of Sanderson. The most interesting part was at the end. He writes a whole thing about his inspirations for the books, and like where they came from. He's very transparent and all of that, and so I enjoyed that just as much as the books. And he has a very long like thank you. So yeah, there it is. You got the Sanderson standalones. Have you read any of these, Dylan?
Not the ones that you just posted on there.
Mm.
I think that it's interesting that when we think of Sanderson books in general, I would not expect them to be in the B and C tiers for you. Like Mistborn is
Yeah,
probably one of your all-time S tier books, I
yeah,
would imagine, or series. So, I mean, It's interesting. I've heard generally very good things about, actually, I would say especially Tress and the Emerald Sea. So
I could
I'm
see that.
I'm not super shocked with how you describe them though. I think that we've always said that Sanderson's strongest, he has plenty of strengths. I would say that his like strongest areas are the action, the world building, especially creating magic systems, the intrigue, the Sander Lanch at the end where he's typically tying things together in a really rewarding way, right?
Mm.
And then some of the areas that we personally don't find as strong in his writing are like his humor, his romance writing, that kind of stuff. So it sounds like Tress and the Emerald Sea leaned more into the things that we're not as huge fans of about. But I don't know. I thought Yumi. I'm curious. Would you say Yumi and the Nightmare Painter was stronger than these
Hmm.
other ones?
I would probably say, I think it was stronger than Tress. The thing about Yumi was I liked all the different settings it was in. I liked the noodle shop. I liked the dynamic of all the friends. I liked the world hopping, and to me I was following
Mhm.
that magic system a bit more and enjoying untangling it. Some of these things, like my thing with the Sunlit Man, is the magic system is like there's no way you could make the connections like you could with a magic system, Mistborn or even Yumi. It's
Mhm.
just much shorter, and it was just kind of complicated, and things were being unraveled, as you're being told. So it was just all happening so fast. And so I think that's why I would rank Yumi a little higher. With all of these, he has fun like creating its own interesting setting and magic system. I just think Yumi was more successful. And then as a romance too, I think it was more successful. Like there's these two characters that
I
are
felt like it was his best romance.
spending a lot of time together and actually learning from each other and becoming better than the some other part. And then that was what I really
Mhm.
liked about Yumi. And that he had a really interesting setting inspired by like Final Fantasy and all that stuff too. Our interests anyway, so I would rank it, if not the best, second best. It's gonna be up there with Sunlit. Because they're just two different things. Sunlit Man is like what I like about Brandon Sanderson. Gave me more of it, and so that's why I'm ranking it high. But
Yeah.
let's jump into something else here. Here's one that you had read that I was really excited to get into because you
Oh,
said
jeez.
you have to listen to the audiobook. It's
Oh,
super
okay.
good and it takes you in surprising places. And this one is, of course, Project Hail Mary
Mhm.
by Andy Weir. The only book I had read of his was The Martian, which I loved, loved, loved. And so I was super excited to get into this, but with the pacing of the show, you had already read it. I wasn't about to jump into it. So I was like, you know what, on this break or whatever, I'm gonna finally read it. I think during the Audible problem thing was when I got it. So I was super excited to jump into it, and you were 100% right. No gaslighting at all on this one. I'm happy to say I was hooked on this one. Andy Weir is a phenomenal storyteller. He gets you interested from the beginning. Another amnesia story, by the way. That's two amnesia stories
Mm.
on this one between the Frugal Wizard's Handbook and this, but this one was exponentially better. Easy A. For so many reasons. I loved the science behind it. I loved the twist of the narration that I won't get into. But it's a great, great sci-fi story, and it's not too different from The Martian, which is an astronaut who was accidentally abandoned on Mars, and he has to survive until a rescue party comes, and there's all kinds of fun drama associated with that. This one's slightly different. I don't want to get too much into it because there's so many great
Yeah.
twists, and I can't fully remember what's a twist and what isn't. So I'm just gonna speak at a very high level. But it's again a guy using real science. I say real science. I mean, it's rooted in real science to try and solve problems that have to do with space travel and all that. And it's super interesting. I don't think it's a spoiler to say the premise where like there's a parasite that's taking energy from the sun. And so there's all this research going on how do we get up there, how do we get rid of that parasite that's taking the sun's energy. The earth is going to die if we don't do anything. So there's like politics involved, there's a really nuclear like relationship story, and a really intimate story of this man with amnesia who's about who he is. It's so much fun, and the ending is so interesting. Like it went in a direction
Hmm.
I wasn't expecting, and very thoughtful and very I think it's worthy of a spoiler filled discussion at some point, because I was super impressed by it. And it's like Andy Weir, you think you write a book like The Martian, it's like how can you replicate that success or that much writing ability? It's like you feel like sometimes it's lightning in a bottle. You write your great story, and then now you have to write a second one. It's can be so much harder, and he delivers again, and just as strong opinions. And the audiobook is fantastic. You are 100% right, Dylan. I agree completely. Highly recommend listening this over reading it. I don't often say, but highly recommend.
Well said, Charles. Yeah, I've spoken about it some already, so I won't bog us down by reiterating what you just said. But yeah, awesome book. I'm glad you enjoyed it so much and put it in the A tier, and it also has me curious what ended up in the S tier, if not Project Hail
Only
Mary.
two
But I
books
guess
got in the
that's
S.
yeah,
Andy Weir
that's
got
where
close. He
we'll
got real
see.
close. Um, Fantastic story. Um, but while we're on this world of sci-fi, why don't I do two more? So I have here the three body problem.
Hmm.
This is another one that I had pitched on the show, didn't get picked. Totally fine. Waited forever on the wait list for the library to get my hands on it. Finally became available. Finally listened to it. It's got this huge Netflix show, and it was good. Translated by Ken Liu, who we both like from
Yeah,
The Paper
Paper
Menagerie,
Menagerie.
and so it just to me the only thing about it was like really traditional hardcore sci-fi, and so it presented some interesting ideas where it's this idea that everyone's playing this video game where you are trying to save the civilization that has three suns orbiting it, and the three body problem is like trying to predict the very unpredictable orbit of three things orbiting something at once. So as you can see, I have a very bare grasp on even what the heck was happening, but it was very good. It had some great, sci-fi themes going on in it. I would recommend it. A lot of like hardcore sci-fi people say it's the best book ever. To me, it was good, but I have to put it at C. I'm a fantasy book at heart. You know, I did enjoy
Mm,
it. It was very good, but I think it was a lot of this weird sci-fi stuff about it's a video game, and then it's real, and then it's not, and then there's space, and then there's this and that, and so yeah, it's a C for me, but I still recommend it. It was good.
mm. All right.
So
Well, I'm yeah. I'm not. It's not a ringing endorsement that has me wanting to go out and read
yeah,
it,
I
but it
wouldn't
sounds like if you're a
recommend it.
hardcore
If you were
sci-fi
excited
fan,
about it
yeah.
originally, I'd say give it a go. But it wasn't picked on FPF, so no rush to read that one. And the show came out and it's come and gone, and I haven't watched it, and so let's jump to another one. The last, I think, kind of sci-fi-ish one. Actually, no, that's a total. I've got two. Um, let's do Dungeon Crawler Carl. This is an interesting one. This one I had read like we were still kind of recording, but by the time I finished it, we didn't have any more episodes in the scheduled, and so this is one of the first ones I read on our hiatus. I got this during our Audible problem like
Yes.
thing, and I got it because
Episode.
our fantasy. Thank you. Our fantasy goes nuts over. I feel like every other day I'm on there, people are talking about Dungeon Crawl Carl. Like,
And our community, I would say. Like it
yes,
was an overwhelming recommendation from our community. I would say the last remnants of when we were still engaging on X with people like the people we love and take their recommendations very seriously were like all saying Dungeon Crawler Carl. So I'm very curious here.
Yeah, and so I got into it, and I also thought it was going to be this like highly produced sound effects crazy audiobook, and it kind of was, but I wouldn't recommend it just based off of that alone. The thing for me about it was so deep into the video game. Video games were such a huge part of its narrative where it's like, I took a mana potion, I hit the goblin, and his HP went from
Well, it's a
90
lit
to
RPG, isn't
85.
it, Charles?
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
I had never read a lit RPG before, and I was
Okay.
learning as I was reading it that it is not for me at all because everything
Okay.
is like I saw his mana potion and then I punched him and his HP went down 5 points and then I got an achievement and then I put on these gloves and they increased my power. I navigated my menu and equipped this thing and it's like constantly. I'm like, okay, um, that's fine, I guess. And then, like, the other thing about it is no literary merit whatsoever. But I think what saved it is it embraces that 100%. Like, this book is stupid and it knows it. And so I had fun with that part of it. The audiobook.
Yeah, I'm glad that Dungeon Crawler Carl didn't ask us for a quote for their marketing. I
I
don't
think
think
they would
this book
love
is
that though. It's
stupid and
like,
it knows it.
yeah,
Is
it was that's what made it
you think they'd
fun. Like
like that?
sometimes you just want something so dumb that is funny. And that's what this is. So you have to be ready for that. And it's just about a guy who's an average Joe on planet Earth, and all of a sudden aliens take over and they force people
More
to
of a daily
participate in these.
Carl than an average Joe. Your
Yeah,
everyday Carl.
he's an everyday Carl who gets thrown into a dungeon crawler, and it's funny. I think what people really like about it is like the narrator goes over the top with every time there's an achievement, and there's like a million jokes a minute on what the achievements are. You know, sometimes in video games, achievements are funny, like killed your first innocent person. Why did you do that? You're horrible. Like that
Yeah.
kind of stuff happening constantly. So every time he goes, new achievement, blah 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 blah. So it's like that happens every 2 seconds, and it's funny, but after a while you're like, okay, I'm done. But there's like a million of these books. It's like highly serialized, and there's no way I'm picking up another one with peace and love. I did enjoy it for what it was, though. I found myself repeating the narrator's kind of voice a lot because he sounds like Joe from Family
It's
Guy.
an
He's like,
Audible exclusive, if I'm
I think the
something like
production
that.
studio also sells it. But yeah, it
Okay.
has that only from Audible tag. But at the end, it was like, check out our website for other
Well,
cinematic
do the voice.
experiences.
Do the voice.
Like, hey, Peter, new achievement. I put on my mana potion and went into the dungeon. Like that's like over the top, over the top. But it can be it works. It's fun. I see why it's popular, but it's getting bogged down in all that literary stuff. You ever have this experience, Dylan, where you're listening to an audiobook in the car and then you get in the car with somebody else and you turn the car on and all of a sudden the audiobook's playing and you're like, oh, don't listen to that, and you like try and kill it. Um,
That that's interesting. I don't know if my car ever automatically plays something from Audible without me telling it.
if
I
I'm
think it's
listening
like
to it
it's very
actively,
focused on yeah. No, I understand. Like
mm,
if I put a headphones in and I had been listening to Audible, it'll jump right to that.
yeah.
But I think my car for some reason is like very focused on Spotify. And it'll, even if I'm listening to like a podcast on Spotify, like many of you all do,
Yes.
dear listeners. But go to YouTube and no,
Mhm.
you can stay on Spotify if you like it. But when listening to a podcast uh, on Spotify, then it'll just jump to like music, like, and it's actually kind of annoying.
Yeah.
But yes, I
So
have not
mine
had
will,
that
if I'm
experience,
listening and I
Charles.
turn the car off and then I, go about my day and come back and turn it on, it'll start playing, it'll
Yes,
resume. And during this book, I lived in constant fear of
I
someone
hope this
getting into
often
my
happened
car. and
during
hearing
A
this.
Court of Thorns and Roses.
Yeah.
Like the second book especially.
I was like,
That is
please
what I hope for you.
God. Especially like sometimes like at work we'll carpool for lunch or something and I'm like, please
Like if
God.
your boss.
Yeah, do not play Dungeon Crawler Carl while another soul is in the car. My soul will leave my body and I will die of embarrassment. But it was a guilty pleasure, I suppose. It was fun. I listened to the whole thing. I got a kick out of it, but it's staying at sea and it's only like I can really only put it better than let's do this. There we go. Um third best right now. So
That's a
that's
controversial choice, Charles.
it's I knew that that's going to upset people, but people have to know like lit RPG is a very niche taste and it's okay not to like it.
You're a
It's
hero.
a dumb book. It's fun, but it's dumb. And it's embarrassing. But it's guilty. You do still like it. And that was my experience with Dungeon Crawler. Carl, it's the last time
Charles,
I'll
how
ever
many
admit
times
to it.
mid-sex scene in A Court of Thorns and Roses did your boss get into your car? And
Thankfully, zero. And the good news is, like, I usually listen at a faster speed anyway, so people aren't, like, catching what's happening. But sometimes my wife will get in the car and a book will play, and it'll be, like, a cheesy line or something. And she's like, wow, okay. What? This fantasy. What do you want from me? So,
all right,
let's
do
do
the next one,
let's do
Charles.
some power rankings here. Let's just get a bunch on the board. Um, Here's an interesting one. Susanna Clark did a short story, "The Wood at Midwinter." This was another one that I was on the wait list for forever, but it's super short. And I learned that it was meant to be like a radio special around the holidays for like one of these British radio stations, and like it's fine. I mean, she's a great writer, but it ends before it even begins. It's just like a woman in a cabin in the woods during winter. She goes out, she talks to some animals, it ends. And like sure you could pull a lot of literary stuff from that. But I think it was just too short to really catch on to anything. That's a C. If you can catch it, it's only like 40 minutes or something as an audiobook. And she reads it, which is cool. It's narrated by Susanna Clark. And so that was fun too. But I more read it to complete the Susanna Clark bibliography.
Yeah. Piranesi would be like an S for me. But,
Yeah, yeah. Piranesi is fantastic.
Yeah.
This is not that. I mean, maybe if this
That's
got to the length and had the breathing room,
yeah.
it would be higher, but I'm keeping it low because that's just where we're at.
Fair.
Beyond the Fringe. This was Christian Cameron. We had a lot of fun reading Deep Black, which is part of his Arcana Imperii Sci-Fi series. And so these are a bunch of short stories. And what I really liked about these was in between the short stories, Christian Cameron would come on and be like, this was inspired by a story a, Vietnam vet told me something. And then he would start the story. And so these were very fun. I had a great time with these. Can't really, rank it too high because it's a short story collection, but it was very, very good. So I'll put it like right here with my other sci-fi.
You're putting it in C and saying it's very, very good. And
C is good.
C is literally the only thing that is you finished it, but like
these are all good.
It's low.
It's Three Body Problem. That's Hugo nominated story.
I'm just looking visually. I'm just looking at this, and
well, we can make some adjustments, but for now, let's see. We got a lot of books to go. We're in the power.
You just
round.
called up. Okay, commenters, please let Charles know what you think of him saying this book is very, very good. I enjoyed it a lot. C.
Okay, well, there's a lot of books here.
Commenters can add their thoughts.
There's a lot of books here, and at the end, it's customary to make final tweaks. But this is where I'm at right now, and I'd ask you to respect the tier list.
I'm having some final tweaks over here. Just
I could tell
about this.
So let's jump to Sabriel. This was one that we had also gotten.
Sabriel.
Whatever.
I think.
I thought I listened to the audiobook. I think I would know what it is. I mean, maybe it's Tim Curry's accent. That's the thing that's like particularly good about this one is Tim Curry's audiobook narration. Tim Curry is a famous actor. He's in Home Alone 2. He's the concierge. But he's also in what's that cult movie? The name of that cult movie, Rocky Horror Picture Show, right?
Oh, he's in that.
He's the lead
I
in that.
I've
Yeah,
never seen Rocky Horror Picture Show, but
me neither. I just know
people
he's in
love
it.
that.
And anyway, fantastic voice. This was a really nice story. It's again a necromancy magic system. Of all the necromancy books that I've read, this is probably my favorite so far. Um, the only thing that's keeping me from putting it at A is basically that, the story was good, but it's this like coming of age story that we've heard of many, many times. So it doesn't like break the genre or break any molds in that way. But it is a really poetic, well told adventure story. And I like the magic system where like death is kind of like a river that flows through the gates, different gates of stages of death, basically. And like these necromancers can go into that world and like pull people out of the river or see what's going on. Like, oh, why is this spirit still hanging on? Oh, they got caught in this gate or something. And they can go and like help guide death along or bring people back or whatever, depending on where they're at. Like, you can't bring someone that's 100% back, but they could save someone that like just had a mortal wound and is actively dying. They can pull them back. And it was kind of a cool system for that. And it's all about this girl, I think she's in her late teens, who goes on an adventure to save her dad, basically. Her dad is this famous necromancer, and so she has high potential, but of course she's never been in charge before, and she's always had her dad around to help her and this and that, and so she's kind of off on her own for the first time, and she's making friends along the way, going on adventures. Really well written, beautifully narrated. Probably going to either be top of the B or bottom of the A. We'll see how it goes, but I'll leave it at top of the B for now. Another one I read was Black Prism by Brent Weeks. This one I was looking forward to as well. I've been trying to pitch Brent Weeks on the show for years, never made it. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride on Friends Pitching Fantasy. It finally became available for me on my library app, so I checked it out, and it was very good. I think I like his Night Angel trilogy better, but this one leans more on like the epic fantasy side, a lot larger. It was good. I think fans of like traditional epic, even slightly grimdark fantasy will enjoy it. I think fans of Brent Weeks will enjoy it, but I wouldn't say it's better than Night Angel trilogy, but still a really strong. It's always nice to read these like old school epic fantasy authors. Like, I'm enjoying going back to Red Seas Over Red Skies as well. It's like, man, I feel like I'm kind of back a little bit. There's something nice and comfortable about reading fantasy books like that, and so I enjoyed it for that. But to me, it's just like I've already kind of forgotten some of the key plot elements, and it didn't stick with me as much as some of these other books have. So I'm gonna keep it towards the bottom of. I gotta rate it higher than Frugal with maybe something I think is respectable.
Charles, you said red seas over red skies and the world building implications of what that would mean versus red seas under red
Oh,
skies are promising. But
correct. That's what I
because
meant.
I was
It's the seas are
this upside down world
the seas
that's
are
just
under
got
the
the sea
skies.
over the sky. But yes,
That would be
point
a
taken,
Brandon
Charles.
Sanderson book
What's
for sure.
yes, yeah, that would be a one of his COVID bonus novels. But yeah, let's see what's next, Charles.
Let's get to what
What
I
you
would
got
say
for
is
us?
the most surprising upset in the whole list of all these books. All my expectations going in, like this one surprised me
What
in a
about
good
the
way.
one that most surprisingly upset me, which is you putting Beyond the Fringe
That
in C?
was
But go on,
surprising. That
tell
was
me about
surprising.
the
But this is the
surprising
one that
upset.
I honestly, I just reserved it at the library because it was popular. I just wanted to get in the queue. And when it became available, I was like, I guess I'll read it. It's short, whatever. I wasn't expecting to like it. I was expecting to. The only reason I was going to read it, so I felt like I had a pass to fully like voice my opinion on it about how not interested I was in it, but it surprised me. I was entertained, and that's Legends and Lattes. Um, what can I say? I was charmed by it. I went in being like cozy fantasy. That just sounds so like uninteresting. Like I thought that also equated to being unchallenging. Like nothing of like excitement would happen in this, but it was just a sweet story about an a former like it's heavily inspired by Dungeons and Dragons. So like this this warrior who's went on a million quests, hardened warrior, decides, you know what, I'm done, and I'm gonna hang up the sword, and I'm going to open a coffee shop. But it's a little bit more than that, because what I liked about it was very much a call to inaction, where here you have a character in a Dungeons and Dragons world who's saying, I'm not going to be violent anymore. Let me put this up here. I'm not going to be violent anymore. And then you have like, she opens up the coffee shop, and then immediately someone's trying to shake her down, or someone's trying to steal something from her. And she's like, you know what? I'm not going to choose violence today. And there's parts of the story where it's like, should you just give in to the bullies in an effort to just live a peaceful, quiet life, or should you pick up all that bloodshed again? Will that just get you more bloodshed? And so that was an interesting sub thread throughout the whole book. And I think Travis Baldry, I don't know how to pronounce the last name, Baldry, he did a really good job with that. And the character was just challenged and like conflicted enough where I was like, I don't know what the right situation here, or not. And then you have the romance aspect, which I felt was well earned in this, and then you have the coffee shop, which I thought was really well earned as well. As someone who had the romantic idea of opening a coffee shop and was in that world, and I used to.
I thought you were going to say like had a romance at a coffee shop, and I was really
No, I used
intrigued
to
as
work
in
at a coffee shop.
before
I
you
used to
finished
sell,
calling it
I used to
romantic.
sell wholesale to coffee shops in New Orleans. So I was in coffee shops all the time. And yeah, I just love that vibe. And you know,
Can I
yeah, go ahead.
say here, Charles? You like have your big preamble about like, I'm not a cozy fantasy guy, and it's like like House in the Cerulean Sea is also cozy fantasy. Like you love cozy fantasy, and it just like doesn't resonate with your
I've
image
been
of yourself.
I've
So you're
been
like you have to do
learning.
some reflecting, yeah.
And
And you've been doing it. You've
this
clearly
book
been doing
was
it.
a huge development for me of
Where are
like,
you putting it?
where
I
am I
want to
putting
know
it?
where you're putting
Great
it.
question. I know there's so many books to get to. Um, I think I gotta put it. I know it's better than Frugal Wizard. Is it better than Black Prism? I think it is. Put it right there. That's pretty respectable.
B.
B.
Middle of B, yes.
Yes, for Baldry. So there you go. Um, so that was a really surprising read. Recommend. Another surprising read that I wasn't expecting, and I'm not sure, Dylan, if this book is on your radar, but it's The Tainted Cup.
It is not on my radar. No.
So let me grab it real quick, but give me 1 second. I'm grabbing it. It's literally right here on my shelf.
Everyone look for the basketball shorts when he's
Don't
on his
look at
way
me.
back.
Don't look at
Look at the
me.
basketball shorts.
Don't look at.
I don't know if the mic is gonna pick up that Charles is just yelling, "Don't
In
look at
here.
me," right now.
I'm
Okay.
grabbing
How many books are you
these two.
grabbing?
Uh, how many books? 5.
I did not see the basketball shorts,
Thank
unfortunately.
God. Okay.
Maybe a bit in the reflection in that blank TV back there.
The Tainted
It is a
Cup.
nice cover.
It's a beautiful cover. It's a beautiful book. This was actually gifted to me over the holidays. Family member. And it was not on my radar at all. But it's a relatively new release, and it's written by Robert Jackson Bennett, who you may know from like the City of Stairs was his like big
Yes.
breakout.
And I
Series.
believe Boundary Side. I think I have that book on my shelf.
Good question. But this came out last year, 2024. So it's relatively new. And what surprised me about it was it's like a classic who done it, where you've got like a the main character is like your Watson, right? That's the sidekick of Sherlock Holmes. So he's like the Watson, and then he's getting involved with Sherlock Holmes type character to solve this murder. But what's interesting about it is it's set in this fantasy world. It kind of reminded me of the Fungal Verse a little bit by our
By
friend.
Adrian Gibson, friend of the
Yes,
show,
yes,
and
exactly.
SFF Addicts
Exactly.
host,
It's kind of similar where it's like there's
co-host.
this all this overgrowth and stuff, and it like the murder took place with like this infection got out, and it like it's a tree basically burst out of this guy, and like that's where they found the body. It was just a tree that exploded out of this dude, and they're trying to figure out what the heck happened. He was poisoned, and so it goes on this whole who done it. And it's also set, think of like Attack on Titan, where they have these cities that are behind walls, and there's these giant monsters. They're not called Titans, they're called something else very similar to Titan, um, that are also just like a constant threat in this world. And so it was pretty cool. I enjoyed the like who done it story structure, and they did everything where like they're gathering the clues, and then it ends with like they get everyone in the room, and the Sherlock Holmes character just like goes off, oh, I saw these things, and it's that person, you know. So it's kind of fun to have that formula, and then he does shake it up a little bit with the fantasy elements and the Attack on Titan stuff about it. It was really cool. So highly recommend. Um, it was just different from what I was reading and expecting to. And the prose was fun. It moves so fast. It's got a lot of these short chapters, which I really appreciate. And it was a bit dramatic, which is always fun. And yeah, it's really cool. Every in this story, like the government deals out like augmentations, and this character has the augmentation that he can remember everything that he sees. And the Sherlock Holmes character, she literally sits in a room blindfolded, and she sends our Watson character out to go and interview people and look at the scene. But all he does is come back and interpret it verbatim to our Sherlock Holmes character, and then she's able to like deduce clues from that. You know, she's always like 6 steps ahead. And so I enjoyed it. And this is definitely an A rank for me.
Wow,
Right under Andy Weir. It was just different. It was a good
that's
use of
awesome.
like an old format, like a who done it with Attack on Titan combined is super interesting. So I highly recommend it. Highly
Yeah,
recommend it.
I'm excited to get into Foundry side. I think there's like a roguish main character, if I'm remembering correctly. So that's cool to hear. Robert Jackson Bennett is killing it with the Tin Cup. And you know what's funny is when we did those episodes on SFF Addicts, at least one of the end of year, like our favorite books we read this year thing. I
Mm.
know Adrian Gibson was talking about Robert Jackson Bennett, so
Mm.
maybe the Fungal
I
Verse
think he
could
would
have
be a
some
great candidate for
inspiration
reading the
from
Tainted Cup.
something that
If you'd like.
Robert Jackson Bennett, or vice versa. Maybe
Vice versa. I mean, this
the
is written
influence
later,
could be
so
vice versa because I think Robert Jackson Bennett has been on Adrian's show, so maybe a little mind melding. But
yeah.
Charles, you got a speed round in you. We're on
Yes.
pace for a
All right.
nice.
I'm gonna do
This is going to be
everything
about the length of that King Kong movie that
everything that's
Peter
not an
Jackson,
A or
right?
an
That's his
S.
name.
Let's freaking go right now. So, um, I have Fury of the Gods. I finished Papa Gwynn's trilogy, and I enjoyed it. But you know, it's by the end, it was just what's else to say? Speed round. I'm putting it in C. I like the characters. I like the action. It was just very very long, and it was the same thing with the second book of like lots of skirmishes, which is fantastic. But it was I was happy that happy for Papa Gwyn, great series, but C for me. Moving right
That
along.
is brutal. Just no love for our friends to put Beyond the Fringe and Fury of the Gods in the C tier.
I mean,
But
what do you want
Charles,
from me? I'll put it.
it's your
It's better than
tier.
Tress. I'll give
And
it
well,
that.
I don't need you to change your. I mean, I think your system is flawed, but this is speed round,
Well,
so
I'm so
uh,
glad
I'll
that
just
you're
say this is not
supporting me
got
on
my
this
seal
show.
approval.
Um, I'm supposed to be speed rounding. The Lesser Dead by Christopher
Speed
Buehlman.
it.
This is another one that I enjoyed. It takes place in like the 60s or 70s and in New York, in like New York City. And it's a bunch of vampires and it's a horror story and it's kind of disturbing reading. Like it takes place, the main character is a kid, but he's been a vampire for like 50 years. And so it's just kind of this interesting blend of like he was innocent at the start, and there's a horrible beginning part of where he's turned into a vampire, and then it just goes from there. And Buellman's a master of the craft. Really, he finds ways to make characters unsettling and relatable, and the scenes of where they're like sucking blood is super gross, and so it's just like a really um, disturbing book. But the prose is so good, so trying to decide if I want to put it at the let's put it put it like right. It was very good though. Next we got, like, here's two friends of the show, Feybound and Among Thieves. Among Thieves I finally read, MJ Kuhn, and I was very excited. I read it very recently. Um Again, love that like inspiration from grimdark fantasy. I really enjoyed all the rogue characters, and I had a lot of fun with it. The reading about the butcher throwing axes and stuff. It was very very fun. And but I think it's at home right here, maybe above Frugal Wizards, right there next to Brent Weeks. That feels good. And then Feybound, um, friend Sarah El-Arifi, who this is like a, I don't know if it's quite young adult fantasy, but it's different from her Burning Fire trilogy, and I appreciate that she's going another direction. She's bringing Fae into the mix. Like, I think this book was very successful for her as well, and so I enjoyed it. It was like a nice like adventure story, and it's got like this magic monster companion aspect to it that I really enjoyed, and yeah, I think right here the spot for Feybound. And then so I read some J.R.R. Tolkien over the holidays. Wrote this really interesting collection of Christmas letters. Every year he would write a letter to his kids, which was super, and he would draw these pictures. It was just super interesting to read. Like over the years, he had like 4 kids or something, various ages. So for like a period of like almost 10, 15 years, he was writing these stories, and he would like draw them out like this. Like he would draw pictures. The book is gorgeous. With my own impending fatherhood coming, it was kind of sweet to see. And then something poetic about all of a sudden, like all the kids get phased out, and then the last letter of the last kid, and it's like, oh, this is probably my last letter, and then it ends. You're like, that's actually kind of sad, but it was well written. I can't see myself giving it higher than a C. It's just a bunch of letters, but it was thoughtful. There you go. Um, and then let's do 2 books that were very similar that I read back to back. And so we have Babel, and we have Blood Over Bright Haven. They're like both dark academia books that are about like oppression, and they came out around a very similar time. So I was like, oh, this is interesting. Babel I really enjoyed. Like, Kwong can write, there's no doubt about it, and her magic system of using translation as a form of magic, and then also as a theme of colonialism, brilliant. Like, really well done. To me, where it struggled was the characters. So you have basically she writes these characters that are just like pure academics who are studying so much and so focused that they forget to have too much of a personality, and it works for her stories. But after a while, you're like, in the story she's got a million characters and they're all like dying or getting into these dramatic moments, and you're like, okay, like this character's dead now. I don't care at all. Let's keep reading. And so, maybe over it kind of got weighed down a little bit, but she nails the theme. She delivers it well explored. I'm gonna maybe put it at top of the B. Top of the B, I think. It's either top of the B or bottom of the A. Very well written. Dylan, I know you read this one. What's your hot take?
I too liked it.
Hmm.
No, I mean, I don't know. I did a whole episode on this, didn't I?
Yes. So
Yeah, it's very well written, but it's dense and has like footnotes and things like that. So I would recommend this, but I would just say if you're going to read it, prepare for a dense book that will feel like an academic tome at times. But I mean, I don't think that's shocking to anyone with the framing of this book.
I don't think so either. It is very good. My thing was I would have loved better characterization and maybe trim some of the fat, and maybe take it those character moments a little less seriously, like bring some levity into college kids hanging out. Like, yes, this very serious situation that they're in, but it was just like so much like we're always fighting stuff and thinking about depressing stuff and doing this and that, and you're like, okay, well, they had a little bit, but not enough. Um, and then the beginning also, Kwong writes this forward of like, oh, people fans of Oxford might nitpick my details, but remember, it's
Speed round, Charles.
fantasy. And I'm like, why am I already feeling like I'm on the defensive with
Speed
Kwong?
round.
And so Blood Over Brighthaven, I've only got 4 books left after this, and 3 of them are the same series. So Blood Over Brighthaven, I would give it the edge over Babel, honestly. I'm not, it's
Could
hard.
it have been Blood over Bright Haven? Much like Red Seas over Red Skies, the
It's the
idea of
over
it is
piece is the key
you would
here.
think the Haven would be above, but
Very similar. The magic system's slightly
well, I
different.
guess a haven, it's not like necessarily like a heaven kind of thing. A
Mhm.
haven could be like speed round, Dylan.
Speed round,
Speed
Dylan.
round.
Speed round.
Sorry.
I'll just say this gives the edge. The magic system in this, it's like it takes place in a similar time period, but it's more fantasy. It's a little bit more futurist. They have some futuristic tech. The magic system works like you have a typewriter, basically, and you're like writing code. And then when you submit the code, that's when the spell happens. And like it draws energy, and you have to like type in like where you're drawing energy from and how much energy you're drawing, and then certain things require more energy than others. And so the main character is the first female to be in the school, and she passes the test with flying colors. She's highly ambitious, but then like she learns some shocking truths, surprise surprise, that high society kind of keeps people down on purpose to stay in power. And she struggles with that because her whole life was spent being the first woman to do this and being super good. So she's like trailblazing in that respect, but just by playing the game, she's in her own way oppressing people. And what I think gives it the edge over Babel was, you know, uh, you are not let off the hook with the theme exploration, and it takes it very seriously. It's also way shorter. It's like half the length, maybe even less. And so a lot of the book is spent where they have these debates with each other over like, is this the right thing? Am I part of the problem or am I part of the solution? Can I participate in this without being part of the problem? And the main character is not let off the hook ever, even though you start out of the gate being like, yes, first woman, let's go, like, let's go, woohoo. And then you're like, oh wait, but like in her path to do that, she's caused a lot of problems. And so it's really interesting to explore that and have that balance. And so highly recommend it. I think these two topping the B, you could make a case for them to go in the bottom of A, but I feel like A and S are reserved for the best of the best. So let's get into it. The Bright Sword by Lev Grossman. This was one I'll do quick. I loved it. I'm a huge fan of Lev Grossman from the Magician's trilogy. Loved it. This is a pretty big book, and it's all about it's a retelling of King Arthur, which is a lot of fun. And I remember when I read that King Arthur tale, what's that freaking popular King Arthur book that I read? I'm drawing a blank on it right now. The Once and Future King. The Once and Future King. He wrote the foreword of it. He's like the book I've reread the most, and I just love. And so now that he's written this, it's kind of, you can tell like the love in here. is high. It has glowing recommendation from George. If you love King Arthur as much as I do, you'll love Lev Grossman's The Bright Sword, a fresh and engrossing take on the matter of Britain, featuring a colorful cast of roundtable knights who don't often get as much story time as they deserve. The creator of The Magicians has woven another spell. That's George R. R. Martin. So, really well written, highly recommend. Really great modern retelling. It's like, how do you tell something as old and stuffy as the Knights of the Round Table in a way that some modern reader in 2025 will have their attention held for this long? And he does a really good job. He brings in a new up and comer, and he gets kind of thrown into the mix of the Round Table. You don't have to have an understanding of the Round Table to appreciate this. You just need to know, okay, King Arthur and Merlin, and you're good to go. But it's really, really well written, so highly recommend. And this is the last 3 books that I'm going to throw up here, and they're the 3 best. And so let's start with the A's. I'm of course talking about Robin Hobb's. What's the name of this series that I love so much? It's not Fitz and the Fool. It's the Tawny Man trilogy. Man. So let's see. You got 3 books here: Fool's Errand, Quest, and Fate. To me, these books are absolutely fantastic. I mean, I was so moved by these, and we kind of talked about it in our last episode, and we're going to have in-depth episodes, so I don't want to go into too much detail. Just to say, like, wow. Especially the one book I am putting in S is Fool's Errand. Of all the books I've read, this is the best one by a long shot. I mean, the beginning of this, where you have Fitz in the cabin, and then the Fool comes to visit, and they're just drinking this like apricot wine or brandy or something, and they're just catching up, and Fitz is like going through all these things in his mind, and then they go on this quest. I mean, I just was so in love with it, and the fact that we're of a similar age and stage of life as Fitz is in this book is made it that much more impactful, and the end was just so emotional. I, when I finished the Assassin's Apprentice and all that, the Farseer trilogy. Thank you. When I finished the Farseer trilogy, I remember exactly where I was when I read the ending and how moved I was. Same case with Fool's Errand. I was on a plane reading it, and I was just completely blown. So very few books are like that, where a lot of these books I have no idea where I was when I finished it. Some of them I kind of forgot a lot of the plot points. This is like burned in my brain. The second and third book I will put an A. I think we've explained these are long books and a lot's going on, and not a lot of it is action packed and exciting, and so I think that's what keeps a lot of these from being like pure S tier. But I will put Fool's Fate, the third book, over Fool's Quest, the second book, because the ending of the whole series, Dylan, I'm so excited for you to read it. We talk about famous opening lines all the time. We're going to talk about famous last lines when you get to it, because I was like...
Last lines are hard to become famous, because you, in this case, would have to read like probably 2,500 pages to get there. So the barrier to entry for famous closing lines, I have to say, is much higher, but I plan on getting there, sure.
Chills. Okay, chills with the last line.
I thought you were going to tell me to chill.
No, I had chills. Chill. You are good.
No, I figured it out, but when you started, yeah. So go ahead, Charles.
So that's it. Excited. I mean, that's the S tier, and chills in the last one. So I don't know if I could honestly put it in S with Fool's Errand, because again, it was a long book. So there's that piece. But I think that's fair, and I kind of like the idea of like there's one S, like take S seriously as like best of the best, and then I think right under it, top of the A. And so now I'm looking at this. I'm trying to see if I want
Charles,
to. Yeah.
Can I? You know what a normal distribution is?
What?
Like the statistical concept?
I know the like bell curve. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm just thinking, and maybe this was my reaction to the why I said the system was flawed, is like I think creating more of that normal distribution is what I'm looking for. So like a long B, and then like I feel like C, I can't see it because it does cut off on the screen, right? So C is just as long as B. And I think I think a more normal distribution would be more effective. But I'm also not you, Charles. If you feel some level of
I
like
could
great
put,
integrity
I could
where
put
you
like,
couldn't
you
put the
want to see
book
like
that you
this?
literally said, yes, the book you literally said, like, I really enjoyed this, and then put in the lowest category of books you actually finished, yeah, I
Something
would
like
go so
this. So
far.
like,
Something
something
like
like this.
that looks a little more, yes. Like, yeah, I'm not expecting you to have to make a full normal distribution, but to me, there is some
You
degree
know
to
what? I
which
wonder if I could
having
like,
like C, which is C is essentially the bottom because literally DNF is you didn't even finish it. But I mean,
yeah.
ooh, that's interesting.
So, so it kind of doubled down. So these are
Look
all
at that
B
is
now. So now you can
interesting.
see it a little
You
bit.
could almost, yeah, yeah, so people can see it. But right, if you it were to stretch all the way out,
B is
you
one.
could
There's. You want me to stretch it
B
out and
would
show you
look
again?
because B is the. I mean, this is part of why I don't like this. Like, we only
So
go to
B is
C really instead of going like A, B, C, D, F
okay.
because it
You make
makes
a good case.
B, which feels really high, to be like a middle. But anyway, this is my.
I think this is a
I
good list.
I just think a book you say I really really like this and then place in a
Okay,
C,
well, you can't take
which is the
anything I say
bottom,
too
is
seriously.
a
Like I'm off the cuff here. I'm
well,
improving.
I yeah, okay, but you understand
I
my point, and
understand, and I
I
think it's
see it
totally fair. Like
represented
our
now
friends
in
Gwyn and
your.
Cameron deserve recognition, and I
I mean,
liked the
I don't
books.
think
Like
they need to be
C is
raised
good.
on
Like
their
to me, it's like
friendship, but C is literally your bottom category of the books you finished. That's
well,
what
I
is.
liked them all. That's
I'm
what
not
I
gonna.
said. There's only two
I'm
books
try.
that I
Yes, you liked every
actively that
book
I
except
actually
for
did not
"This
like.
Is How You Lose the Time War"
Yeah,
and
I
"Witch
liked all
King."
the rest, and so the distribution is gonna be skewed to because they're all. I would recommend all of these except those two, and maybe Dungeon Crawler Carl. I'm on the edge of, but I would recommend it to certain people. But um, yeah, there you go. That's
It looks more
this looks
visually
more to your
appealing to me
taste.
now.
We did it.
Yes,
Okay, so I feel good. Oops, oops. Where did I have this?
Sunlit Man was a B.
It was a B, but I think it
So
was above Legends and
yes,
Lattes. Okay. Yeah, so
I find this way more visually like fitting.
you find this.
And I like the one S and the one DNF. I mean, I would, my perfect version just
Yeah.
visually would be if you put one more to A and one more down to C, but I don't think
One more to A
if
and
you don't
one
feel that
down to C.
represents you, just visually that would make it right. Wait, no, just one more. I think you have an uneven,
Oops.
an amount of books that wouldn't be able to look like visually. Oh, one more to B and then one more um, from B to A would make it
One more
like
and one more from B to
look perfect,
C.
but you don't have to make
No,
it
no.
look
So you
perfect.
well, let's try it out. So you're saying move one
So if
from
you
B to C.
moved the top of B up to A,
Okay.
actually, and then moved one from C to uh to the bottom of B, I guess.
Okay. Well, I can't put
Like
a Tolkien thing there. I'll put Buellman like this. How's that?
okay. So now it looks perfect, like from
I just have a hard
the
time
bell curve
separating.
of it.
Like
If you
Babel and
don't,
Blood over
yeah,
Brighthaven were so similar. Like maybe I would put
you
them
don't
both at
have
A.
to. Well, that would mess it up again unless you
Yeah,
moved
but I mean,
another
like at
one
least now
down
it's
to
like
if you move
skewing
the
towards
Buellman,
positivity.
right? But if you but if you move the Buellman, which you kind of begrudgingly put in B anyway, if you move that back down to C, we're back to it looking beautiful. Yes, yes.
We did it.
Oh,
Oh, that's
that
actually yeah.
literally
Okay.
looks like a normal distribution.
Okay, great. And
Which
I
is
am totally happy with this.
I don't think that necessarily. Yeah, that looks nice, like visually, and it appeals to that kind of normal distribution
Well,
of
there
it.
we go,
That being said,
guys.
if it doesn't represent how you actually
No,
felt
no.
about these books,
Like
if it feels true, then that's fair.
this
But
does feel true. I think it does. I was trying to purposefully be super selective with the A's and maybe I was over over stingy.
I think that's what S is for. If you want to be stingy, like
But
I
no,
don't
this is
know.
good. This is good.
I
I think
have
this
a
is
tier
good.
list thing. Like I need to talk to
You
someone
know
about it,
what?
I guess.
Maybe I'll even put frugal wizards down to
Don't.
the bottom of
Oh,
like
gotcha.
this.
Okay, as long as you
Bump
don't
up bump up these guys.
mess with,
Maybe even Black
just don't move
Prism
anything
goes.
all the way.
Does Black Prism go here?
Let's not be nitpicky
Yeah, let's not
about
be
the
nitpicky, but
the
this
more
is this
important
is
is the
the movement is
categories.
done. These are the tiers:
Yes,
D, S, A, B,
beautiful,
C, and D and F.
beautiful.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, guys, we did it. So there we go. Very happy
Yes.
about the list. You know, fantastic. What do you think of this reading assortment? Did I represent well?
I thought you read broadly and like interestingly, and I'm like, eh, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I
I'm
swung for it. It
happy
was
that
largely dictated by whatever was available next at the library, so it got a little bit of a random assortment. Some of the books I had bought and I held on to, like Among Thieves is another one I didn't show, but I had this for forever, and I'm so happy that I read it, and then, just happy to catch up on all. There we go.
yeah, I love it, Charles. Thank you for taking us on that journey.
Mm.
And maybe one day I'll rank the 3 or 4 books I read over the last
Add it to this list.
No, the list now
Cannot be touched. Adding 3 would throw it off.
Yeah, I cannot handle adding an odd number of. Well, I guess you could add
You actually,
2,
yeah.
1 to A, 1 to C, and 1 to B, and it'd be fine. But anyway, no, Charles, you created a wonderful looking list here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Visually.
So I
And
guess
that's the
then that
best thing
means,
I can say.
we've
No, I'm
taken
just
in the
kidding. No,
list.
I appreciate your
Fools
analysis.
of all of them, Fool's Errand tops the charts, and it's the first in a trilogy. So what are you waiting for? Dive in to that. I mean, I guess you have to read Assassin's Apprentice, Farseer trilogy first, but then read this. So there you go.
And arguably, you should read.
Yeah, you should, but you don't have to. But there we go. So that was
Why
a lot
am I
of fun.
blanking on the name of the freaking
Live Ship
pirates? But Live Ship Traders. Yeah.
Because the names of the books are so different from the names of the trilogy that it's hard to
Right.
remember. So,
Yeah.
anyway,
Well, thank you, Charles. That was really cool to see. I think people come away with a lot of books. I know I'm coming away with a lot of books I'm interested in checking out.
yeah, of all of them, like finish Robin Hobb, but then like check out the Tainted Cup. That was an interesting one that I think you would like.
It sounds really. I think I'm gonna, when it comes to Robert Jackson Bennett, I think I'm reading Foundry Side first, but then
Okay.
especially if I really like it, I will.
Yeah, this was my first Robert Jackson Bennett book, and so I'll definitely be checking out more. But of all of these, considering you've read a handful of them, that's the one I would recommend first, and then maybe Blood Over Bright Haven after that. I think I really like. So there you go. Let's get into the outro. What do you say?
I say let's get that sweet, sweet outro music pumping, Charles.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much, one and all, for listening to yet another very exciting episode of the Friends Talking Fantasy Podcast. Our show now, I guess. And Dylan, if they like what they heard today and they want to support the show even more than watching and listening and liking and ringing that bell and all that, what can they do?
Toss 5 stars to our podcast, which you can do over on Spotify. You can also rate and or review on Apple Podcasts. I think at this point, though, we are prioritizing head to YouTube. That's where the conversation is going on.
Yeah,
We
drop a
appreciate
comment,
everyone
man.
who watched and commented on our last video, and we're hoping that kind of conversation can continue now that our social media landscape is not what it used to be. But you can follow us over at the FTF Podcast on Instagram, also just at the FTF Podcast on TikTok, I think, which unfortunately has not been the most active either. And I'm not even going to mention that that letter of. I'm not. Am I getting like the opposite of played out? Like at the Oscars, right? They'll start the music, but at Friends Talking Fantasy, we stop the music when I need to stop talking.
Guys, this is the
so
show
I will stop
element.
talking.
We're live now.
Yeah.
Anything could happen. We're recording live.
We're
Anything
not
could
live.
happen. You were doing great. I didn't mean to do the opposite of play you out. You know? I meant to build you up. So keep going. You were doing great. So you were talking about leaving comments.
Yeah, I mean, follow us. I was trying to say I won't mention even that letter of a social media platform anymore. I'm just sick of it. I'm done.
Yeah, we're done.
But we are far from done here at Friends Talking Fantasy Podcast. Keep an eye out for more episodes. Head to the YouTube if you're down for a visual component. And yeah, stay tuned, y'all.
Stay tuned, y'all. Well
More
said.
than enough, all that.
Just listening, guys. So much more than enough. It's watching now,
We're
too.
watching.
Yeah, watching now. You guys are awesome. I hope you enjoyed the tier list. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you. And as always, guys, go forth and conquer, friends.